Greetings, everyone. Welcome back. This is WoW Killer. I'm Garrett, joined, as always, by Taliesin. Welcome back, dude.
I haven't missed an episode yet, Garrett.
You haven't?
I've been here this is episode 7, I know, because you said it just before we started. And because I wouldn't have thought it was episode 7, Garrett. I'd have thought that we were on, 20, 25. It feels like I've been here for years.
As someone with two other shows,
it was a long preamble this week.
Yeah, over 300 episodes. 7 still feels like a newborn baby. Like if this was a puppy, maybe our eyes have just opened, just started to open.
Oh wow, I feel all eyes have opened.
Oh, many of them. Definitely more than 2. Definitely more than 2. Unless you're squishing them into potions, that could also happen.
Oh, icky. No, that was me trying to make a good link to 8.3 and like eyeball and corrupted stuff. And you had to make it icky.
Well, you get the eyeballs when you're out there questing in the... you squish the eye, man. Literally, that's what it says. Right-click to squish the eye.
I don't do that one.
You don't squish the eye? Do you just have a bag full of eyeballs that don't
stack? Those are my least favorite quests. I hate the ones where you jump on the eye. And I'll tell you why, Garrett. It's because... there's that's rubbish, and also because there's like a beam that is kind of following you around, and if you hit the beam then it teleports you out of the kind of like little instance and you have to go back in. Did you know that, Garrett?
I did not realize that.
No, exactly. Because like the whole point of that world quest, and the thing that makes that world quest fun, is that when you're jumping on the eyes, there's a beam that's following you around that is supposed to zap you out, but it's the slowest moving, most rubbish beam in the entire world. So like I would argue the whole point of that world quest is that you're trying to do something whilst avoiding the beam. But you've done that world quest multiple times and never even noticed the beam, Garrett. And I was the same. I never even noticed the beam until one time when I accidentally ran into it. I was like, what the fuck was that? And now it's better. And I hate it because of that. I hate it because and you know that other one in the little gazebo where you've got to find the thing to plug into the middle bit in the gazebo, and you pick it up and you put it over your head because it's literally right next to the gazebo, which is rubbish as well. And there's like eyeballs swirling around, and it's clearly supposed to be some kind of like bullet hell dodge thing that you've got to do to get to the center, but it's not, is it? You just walk there because it hardly moves. And I'm like, clearly the whole purpose of this world quest is that it's a bullet hell dodgy thing. But there ain't no bullet hell here. There ain't no dodging. I'm walking peacefully to the center of a lovely gazebo, and there's some eyeballs. And the boss in Pandaria Land, the final boss of the assault, where you go there and he does like this kind of beam that comes out of him. It spreads out of him, and it's like a maze. It's like a maze on the floor. And first time I saw it on the PTR, I was like, oh, wow, this is really interesting. Like, if I touch this purple stuff on the ground, I'm clearly going to die, and it's spreading out. So it's giving me a maze that I have to follow, and survive while I'm fighting this boss. And I did that, and it was really fun, and I thoroughly enjoyed it until one day I was like, what happens if I do get hit by the purple stuff? Nothing. 0 happened. I got like a little tiny bit of damage, which I wouldn't have even noticed.
I got hit by the purple stuff yesterday. You're talking about the boss.
Cheated, and on the PTR, Garrett, I wrote, okay, here's the thing, right? I never report bugs on the PTR because I ain't no snitch, okay? Snitches get stitches, and I don't. If I find a bug on the PTR, I'm like, well, they probably should fix that, but I'm not going to tell them. I ain't no snitch. And I actually did a bug report for that. I actually wrote I was like, dear Blizzard, here is my bug report. Please make this purple thing on the floor hurt more, because at the moment it's rubbish. It has to hurt me, Blizzard Daddy. Words to that effect. They didn't,
I went to so I've been kind of without a home. A lot of my regular WoW friends are doing they're like hardcore raiding. They got no time for me, Tally. They got no time for the Garrett and his. I took a break to go play Classic, and now I'm back.
Yeah, well, you had your chance, mate.
Yeah, so I am.
Lose.
So I'm soloing my horrific visions. That's what I've been doing.
But your trip to Classic was well worth it because you got to max level and enjoyed the end game.
Oh, this is just unfair. This is unfair because before the show we were talking, and you know full well I haven't maxed out in Classic yet. I'm sitting there at like 52 going, dear God, these final 10 levels are hell.
Welcome home.
Which they are. And now I'm remembering why I didn't hit 60 till Burning Crusade. Yeah. So I've been soloing Horrific Visions, and then I finally got to the point, Taliesin, because I'm gonna defend myself. I'm gonna pre-defend myself against the haters and the callers of casuals in World of Warcraft, and say I play all the Blizzard games except Overwatch. Okay, I have other Blizzard games to play. So
why don't you like Overwatch? Can we? I just want to like. This is a WoW show.
It's the same thing all the time. It's the same thing all the time.
Someone always picks Hanzo, and you're like, I wanted to be Hanzo. Hanzo's my favorite.
Wow, you're outing me as I have been outed as a not level 60 in Classic and a Hanzo main. I am the worst. I can just feel. I can feel the unsubs. I can feel them, Taliesin.
You deserve them.
So I've been.
Why do you really hate Overwatch?
I just got bored with it, man. I just realized. I stopped playing TF2 because I got bored with it, and I'm gonna stop playing this because I get bored with it. It's it's a team-based shooter. It's really good at what it does. It's not the kind of game that I continue playing forever.
Fair. Yeah. I hardly play it, but when I do, I usually play it for like a couple of weeks straight and really enjoy it, and then I'll come back to it a little bit later on.
That tends to be me and most multiplayer shooters. Like just dive in hardcore for weeks on end, and then
that tends to be me for most computer games, to be honest. You know, it's only WoW that I really hold up to a higher standard than that, and that I demand entertainment like 15 years later. Yeah, it's really when it comes down to it.
WoW, Heroes, Hearthstone. You know, just this trifecta, like the it's the holy trinity of video games for me. It's like, what else do I need? I've got my card game over here, I got my MMO over here, and I've got my isometric MOBA that doesn't have last hitting, so it's clearly superior to all other existing MOBAs. That's me, the raging Blizzard fanboy. But I love chat room. Those other games still exist. My favorite thing. Wow, I love hardcore WoW players. Y'all are the best. But I just finally stepped into. I finally have gotten to the point in Horrific Visions where I've gone past just killing the first boss or like the main boss. I stepped out into the drag into Siege of Orgrimmar because it was time. Well, not Siege of Orgrimmar, the Vision of Orgrimmar, Taliesin. I went to go do the boss at the end of the drag, and I was really worried. I like studied up. I looked up a video ahead of time. I looked up the abilities. I'm like, ooh, there's some stuff that's gonna sap my sanity. I better pay attention to these mechanics. And the little flurry that guy does, I forget the name of the boss at the end of the drag, but he does like the shadow bolts like out in a cone. Yeah. And I remember watching the video, and they were like kind of dodging in between them, but that thing just follows you. And those things are way faster than they look in the video. And I'm like, screw it, I'm Paladin. I'm just gonna, eventually I just divine steeded and just did a full circle and never got hit. But like the first 2 times I did this, Taliesin, I just got smacked straight in the face by these things, popped up in the air, took a bunch of sanity loss, and I still beat the boss. It didn't matter. I just face tanked all of the abilities of this boss, and I still won.
Baller. What class are you playing in Visions?
Paladin. Ret.
Nice.
I have to solo.
Ret. So okay, so you're not going in as prop.
No, because like I said, my I'm too casual for my friends. Gotta play by myself. Gotta go in there alone, and I'm like, what am I gonna do? Go in there solo? So holy? What do you think I am? A madman? Go in there as prot, do no damage?
Yeah, because that's the thing. Because I play as discs, so I need the deeps help. I need the deeps help in those Horrific Visions. So I go in. I use my streamer privilege, and I get a little group together, and I go in, and we go hardcore on that, and they blast that. So I'm doing full clears at the moment, which is really good. And when I get, I'll probably do another full clear today when I stream. When I go on stream, get my level 9 cloak. And then I've got like another couple of horrific like vials which I can use. So I'm going to try and push it with some masks then as well.
Nice.
That's what I'm going to try and do.
Well, rad. I'm going to start poking some people. I want to try it with a group. I have yet to try it with a group. I've only done it alone, which I'm enjoying.
They have hotfixed it to make it easier if you go in solo tank or healer.
I didn't realize that. To me, it just seemed like that was an insane thing to try and accomplish.
Yeah. So I'd still rather go in as a group because all my talents that I took for our group now, and also I just enjoy it more anyway. Even though it is like incredibly nerve-wracking, but it does bring us on to Garrett. It's the thing we're talking about in this episode anyway. Is 8.3. May I suggest that this episode is called Corruption in big letters, just because that's cool. Maybe with multiple N's at the end. And like we are, as you saw, we were both keen to talk about 8.3, and I'd like to carry on doing so, but just so there is some kind of like structure to this episode as well. We thought the topic for today would be 8.3, just in general, and our kind of reactions and feelings about it, but also from a more subjective point of view, because we like to have an official topic to actually be talking about per episode. We're a single topic World of Warcraft podcast, which you'll know because we are laser focused on every topic that we talk about.
Yes, we never
meander, we never stray. That's what it is. And so we thought we'd look at other final patches throughout World of Warcraft and how they compare, and how 8.3 measures up, Garrett.
Yeah, because we've been doing a lot of thinking about this patch, and so has the internet, frankly. The internet has been doing a lot of comparisons, and we figured, well, why shouldn't we get in on this wonderful conversation and talk, let's actively think about 8.3 and how it stacks up to final patches from the rest of World of Warcraft.
I wanted to make an episode about Warcraft 3 called just Lies, so that we could have made all of the money in the world. Because that is the hot market at the moment, is videos about Warcraft 3 and lies in capital letters. And we could have both afforded a lovely holiday after that episode, I reckon. That would have been really nice. Even though we don't monetize this show, we'd have found a way. It would have been really good. So it would have been awesome.
Would have been wonderful.
Yeah, no, but talk about something I actually care about instead. 8.3.
Yeah. Yeah, so for the purposes of this, we are going to be taking some liberty with what we consider a final patch. Because famously at this point, 8.3 will not have an 8.3.5 patch, which is often used to kind of just tidy up loose ends and maybe chuck a little bit of extra content and quests and stuff at the very end, kind of like an epilogue sort of thing. We're going by the actual main content patch that finishes off an expansion and what that consists of and what it gives players from both like a gameplay and a lore point of view as well, I guess, as well, and sort of rounding off story and things like that. And where expansions have had 0.5 patches or like little things that have come after the main content patch, we'll probably just include that in as being a conversation about the final patch itself, because that makes sense. Yeah, which all of this means, if we're gonna compare 8.3 to the oldest final patch, we're gonna start with 1.11, not 1.12 for vanilla. We're gonna talk with 1.11 because that's when we got Shadow of the Necropolis. That is a more that is like final patch territory. 1.12, great patch, added some PvP stuff, but it didn't add a raid, right? It didn't bring in a new tier of armor set, it didn't bring in a new legendary, all things that 1.11 Shadow of the Necropolis did bring in. And that's kind of that's what we're looking for here when we're comparing. Like when we get over to Wrath of the Lich King, we're not comparing 8.3 to the Ruby Sanctum patch. It's just ridiculous. Who would do that?
But that's how I was going to say that BFA was better than Wrath. You just ruined my argument.
That's my goal, Taliesin, is to preserve Wrath's integrity as the greatest expansion of all time.
I got a present from Blizzard today. Came through the post. It's a mug with my name on it, Taliesin. How's that? There's one for Evertel as well. So the thing I like about this is we don't have to give it away in a competition because no one would want it. And it's got a little wooden thing on. And I was like, Ian, what can I do for you for this mug? What, let me scratch your back. And he was like, just say that BFA is better than Wrath. And I was like, sure thing. Let me fire up WoW Killer. Let's go.
I thought you said we weren't monetizing this show.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So I 8.3, it adds quite a lot. The springboard for this is you and I were kind of waxing philosophical about corrupted gear because I think we both enjoy it quite a bit. We're kind of happy with it, and that's. I'm really sorry. Yeah, I know. I know it's a hot topic, but like, I like it too. I think it's really rad. I think it's way more.
Okay, why do you like it? And we'll get through to people's criticisms of it in just a moment. But you've done it. Here's the hill you're going to die on, Garrett. It's the I like corruption gear hill. It's quite tentacly and purple, but you like it. Why do you like corrupted gear.
Corrupted effects are just so much cooler than the procs on like Titanforge gear. Like just full stop. They're just it's interesting. And on top of that, it's a bit of a lore nerd. I think it's also a fun way to tie it. It's a fun mechanic that's rooted in lore, which I like, rather than Titan forging, which is just really clinical and boring in my mind.
Yeah.
And also, I still miss tier gear a lot. And to me, corrupted gear does quite a bit to actually kind of smooth that over. I'm like, this is really interesting. I like this. I haven't gotten like the best corrupted gear, but what I have gotten are corrupted effects that are just fun. I love spawning a tendril out in the world. Like that's just like, why? I don't know.
Don't you feel angry that you haven't got the best corrupted gear though? Because I know that's one of the frustrations I'm seeing online a lot. It comes from people who, I'm not seeing so many complaints from corrupted gear about people that have got all the best ones. I'm seeing more complaints from people who are frustrated that they don't.
Yes, the same way I was angry I wasn't getting the best random legendary rolls back in Legion. I've had this exact same feeling before with similar systems, and I'm just used to it by now. So I'm just enjoying the fun of this.
Yeah,
and frankly, it's all relative. I bet if I was hardcore rating at the moment, I'd be significantly more impacted by how that makes me feel than I am right now, which is just kind of taking in 8.3 as a solo player. And I'm very surprised by how much I'm enjoying 8.3. And famously on this very show, I said that I was kind of very suspicious of my enjoyment levels kind of going into this, because I tend to prefer patches with new zones and new dungeons, and this had neither. But I'm having a good time overall. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot, right, in 8.3. Despite the fact that it's not a new dungeon, there's not a new zone. We've got a new raid, we've got new allied races, new Mythic Plus season with the new affix, heritage armor, horrific visions, so on and so forth. So comparing that to 1.11 back in vanilla, I mean, I think it surprisingly stacks up pretty well, because we didn't get a new dungeon in 1.11. We just got a new raid, Naxxramas, which if you remember, or maybe you don't, very few people saw that raid.
Well, I don't remember it at all. But I would say, because obviously I wasn't playing famously, I wasn't playing in vanilla. My vanilla experience is coming purely through playing Classic. And we're not there in Classic yet. We're not. That'll be coming in phase 6, obviously, the final phase of Classic. Were you playing then? Were you playing any max level then?
No, I never hit max level in vanilla.
Again, just like in Classic then, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Just like exactly like in Classic. I've actually fallen off a little earlier. I made it to winter spring, back in actual vanilla, and then finals I think hit, and I had to take a bit of a break, and then BC came, and you've heard this story before. You're just outing me today. You're out for blood today, Taliesin.
Sorry.
Jeez, man. Yeah,
I'm not max level classic either. But no, so I mean, yeah, Naxxramas has got this like legendary kind of sheen to it for sort of people who weren't there and who have learned about sort of the early days of WoW after the event, like me. So I can tell you what I know about Naxxramas without having done any research. I know that it was released. I know that not a lot of people did it. And I know the reason for that is because of the very linear style that Classic had when it came to gearing and unlocking content. As in, when Naxxramas came out, most of the other raids in the game at that point was still relevant content and continued to be relevant content. And so it wasn't just a case of, the Naxxramas patch is out. Now, if we're raiding, that's what we're going to do. Even if you've just started raiding, you hit max level and Naxxramas is the raid that you're doing now. That's very much how it works in WoW these days. If you were to hit max level right now, you'd get your quest to go and do your 8.3 stuff, and you get your cloak. And if you were going to raid, you'd go into Nyarlathotep. You wouldn't even really look at Uldir or Battle for Dazara lore, or certainly not the 2 boss raid.
Which add catch-up mechanics to future topics for this show.
Yeah, absolutely. But I feel like we'll probably touch on it here as well, because that wasn't something that was in place with Naxxramas. So you hit level 60 when the Naxxramas patch was out, Well, you still went and did Molten Core, and you then went on to do, Anchorage stuff and Black Wind Descent stuff and things like that. And before you even thought about it, which is one of the reasons why so few people. Well, for a start, there was a much smaller percentage of the player base that was raiding anyway in vanilla, and a much smaller percentage of the player base that ever even got to max level as well. And then to go through all of the hoops once you got there to actually get to this end game content, which was Naxxramas. That's why such a tiny amount of people saw it.
Boy, I think it would be.
Would you say that's an accurate kind of evaluation of the situation?
I mean, considering they have come out and said as much, yes, I would say that's an accurate. An accurate thing. They've gone on record multiple times talking about the very small percentage of the player base that actually got to see Naxxramas. And I believe, I don't have a quote in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that was brought up when Naxxramas was returned at the beginning of Wrath of the Lich King. They're saying that, well, so few of you saw it, and also going to save ourselves a little bit of work here. we brought it back, and that was definitely the case for me. I got the Wrath of the Lich King. I'm like, oh my, this is cool. I'm like, the textures are a little old and busted, especially after having just played through the leveling experience of Wrath of the Lich King, where, frankly, WoW's art team, like, I think really kicked into high gear. I thought Wrath was a major visual improvement over what came before it, and that was the only thing that really stuck out to me in Naxxramas. But the encounters were fun as hell. It was actually rather difficult to progress through, although clearly not as difficult as it was back in vanilla, and. So yeah, I think that's a very accurate assessment. It sure would be interesting to and not to get lost in the weeds here, but I'm curious what the game would look like if they tried to keep in like systems like LFR, but not have catch-up mechanics. Like,
do you know what it would look like?
What?
8.2 essences. Okay, so here's my link. Here's the link between 8.3 and the Naxxramas patch. Because I've always been told that that's the thing that Blizzard does wrong now. I've always been told, like, wouldn't it be great if this content happened and the second a new patch came out, all of that other content wasn't completely irrelevant, all that kind of gearing wasn't irrelevant, all those systems weren't irrelevant. You look at Classic. Look how so few people played Naxxramas because, when they got to max level in Naxxramas patch, all of the other stuff was still relevant that they had to go through first. That's how you do it. And then 8.2 essences happened. And if you want to get those essences in 8.3, you have to go back and do 8.2 content. People don't like that, Garrett. People don't like that at all. Dare I say, they thought they did, but they didn't. Dare I say it?
There's, I want to push back on that a little bit. Right? A little bit. I think there's a psychology to that. I think there's a psychological block where you go, well, I'm doing this just for essences. And it's more of a rub, and it probably depends on your personality, what you value, what you enjoy in the game versus what you don't. But for the sake of this conversation, let's talk in general terms here. I personally would react better to doing old content if it's just I just need to get enough gear to like do enough damage or survive enough if I'm tanking or do enough healing if I'm healing. If I'm doing, because to me that is the traditional. Like that is the play curve of World of Warcraft. Do content to get gear to do the next content. So if I had to be stuck even in a world with LFR, say they kept LFR in the game as it exists now, but there were not catch-up mechanics, I still had to go back and do old dear LFR into Battle for Dazar'alor and so on and so forth up to so that I could actually start walking into Ny'alotha without getting into a big spitballing session on how we would actually make that work. I don't think that would bother me as much if it was just I need to get my eye level up to a certain amount so that I can actually be competent versus I have to go back and checkbox essences off my list. For me personally, okay. That's how I can talk because this kind of came up off the cuff without getting into.
I don't know, because for me, and I'm speaking as someone who got a new ranking on one of my essences yesterday from 8.2, because Conflict and Strife is one of my best essences. I've never bothered to get more than rank 1 on that before, but with the new raid being out, I was like, okay, I should definitely do this. I've got all my essence slots unlocked now, so I've got my main essence, and now I've got 3 kind of minor essences unlocked that I have to fill as well. And I was like, I should probably start leveling up my conflict and strife. I should probably start doing that. And I went in, and to do that, I had to get a PvP rating of 1,000 in ranked PvP. And the last time I went into ranked PvP was when I tried to get my beautiful, glorious round Hippo Boy in season 1. I haven't touched it since the very beginning of BFA, and it broke me. I went in there. It took me about 3 hours to get my 1,000 rating in arenas in 3s, but I did it. And I got an essence, and it felt great. And the reason it felt great was because I'm not going to throw it away. Yeah, I had to, and the same applies to going back to do kind of like the older content, which are more problematic, I understand. And they have nerfed the requirements of those a little bit, but not enough, in my opinion. But it's when it comes to the essences, you're not getting something that you're going to replace like Uldir gear would be. You're going to replace Uldir gear instantly. What you are doing is you are performing a task to secure your best in slot gear, because that's what Essences is essentially, is gear. It's just a gear drop that has a very specific way of getting it. And it performs a function that people have always been asking for in modern WoW, that they say that doesn't exist in modern WoW. A set path to definitely obtain, with much effort and grinding, a best in slot piece of gear that will be relevant for the entire expansion. So I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I mean, do we want that or not?
I don't want to go do arena for best in slot so I can go raid.
I mean, that's okay, fine. But arena. That's the only one that you need to do arena for. Or I mean, you can do it with battlegrounds if you like, but that's the only that particular one you need to go and do arena. But the others are gained through different ways.
That's my rub with a lot of quote unquote modern WoW. Frankly, is the forcing me to engage in World of Warcraft in ways that I'm not particularly interested in playing the game to get things that I have to have. Whereas I used to just be able to get everything from raiding or dungeons, kind of back in my heyday, which was Wrath of the Lich King, which is why I've been beating the rep tabard drum for years now. Like, that's the one thing I really want to see added back to this game again, because if I have to do one more freaking world quest for a turtle person for rep, I'm gonna scream. But that's neither here nor there. It's an interesting thought, and we could probably debate that for 4 hours on its own, right?
I mean, so what would be a better way of getting essences for you? Because I've got to say, I really like the essence system. I wouldn't go back and do the rep grind on ults, but I'd get the ones that I could get relatively easily, but they're ults, So
if it's things that I need for dungeon and raid content, I should get them through dungeons and raids. Is kind of like the simplest way I can put that.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, yeah, conflict and strife is better in PvP. It's a versatility thing. So it is obviously kind of designed for PvP. It's just that versatility is quite powerful in raid and dungeon as well.
Yeah.
A lot of the time.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So that's the problem there. But I can see they've tried to do that.
Yes. Yeah. And it's not something that like makes me supremely angry. It's like, clearly they are also, part of this is kind of like taking a risk. Like, well, what do we want to do? We want to keep this varied, keep it interesting. And until you get the entire player base of World of Warcraft actually simming and testing this stuff out, maybe they never thought that essence would be that good for raiding, right? It may have been a surprise, and very much tends to be the case with these sorts of things. Because only so many players test things on the PTR, right? So it's an interesting thought. But back to 1.11 versus 8.3. Actually, it's an interesting thing. We can probably move right along to like 2.4 and Fury of the Sunwell, and it's because that's as we talked about in the past, to me, I think 2.4 is really kind of the poster child for post expansion launch patches, because it brought in a new zone, lots of new dailies, a new raid, a new dungeon. This is kind of, as we talked about a couple episodes ago, and you said, Garrett, what's your checklist for a patch? And I'm like, new zone, new dungeon, new raid. That's 2.4 in a nutshell. Had just checked all those boxes, even though I barely stepped my foot inside Sunwell. Because again, of kind of a lack of catch-up mechanics.
Thinking back as someone who wasn't there, and you can correct me here, but this always seems like the one that people get wrong. Is the end of Burning Crusade. Because you ask who is the final boss of Burning Crusade, they tell you it's Illidan Stormrage, but it's not, is it?
No, it's kil'jaedan. Kil'jaedan coming out in that really cool animation at the time, out of the Sunwell.
Yeah. So how did that feel as a player playing through that? Because a lot of again, to link this to 8.3, a lot of criticism about the raid in 8.3 and the whole setup of 8.3 is that N'Zoth has kind of come out of nowhere a little bit and been dealt with incredibly quickly. I know he has been kind of built up throughout the expansion. He has been a presence, but we released him at the end of 8.2, and suddenly in 8.3 there's tentacles everywhere. I say everywhere, 2 very specific zones,
and definitely more in one zone than the other.
Yeah, especially if you don't know that it's going to swap over the next week, Garrett.
No, even when it swapped over, there's definitely more tentacles. Even after it swaps over, everyone's like, did you know it swapped over? Which frankly, I didn't. But even when it swaps over, Uldum looks like they just kind of... You ever watch a movie and you're like, oh, they didn't shoot this at night. They just put a night filter on it. That's what Uldum looks like compared to...
cowboy movies. Yeah. And they're casting shadows on the floor.
Yep. There's there's very directional shadows still. What's going on here? This doesn't make any sense.
I think the engines are going to see you, Bruce Wayne. I think the engine's going to see you. No, but I actually disagree with you. I actually prefer Uldum in the assaults, and I'll tell you why. It's because for me, John Wayne, not Bruce Wayne. I know.
Bruce Wayne, my favorite traditional Western actor.
Yeah. The engines are going to see you, Bruce Wayne, and they're going to kill you just like they did your parents.
A fistful of Batmans.
Yeah. But no, I like Uldum because I'll tell you why. It's because of the expanse of water in Uldum, and seeing the kind of old god Black Empire platforms hovering really big above the water. It's actually really cool. When you come out of the portal in Uldum and it's the assault zone with the tentacles and stuff, and you mount up and you fly. The raid entrance is right there, which is handy on raid week, much better than Pandaria. We have to fly halfway across the map, and you start flying out and you see those big flat platforms, really eerie and kind of Illuminati over the water, and that says Black Empire to me, and I find that really exciting. I quite like that.
Fair. I like that as well. I like that. But in terms of how it felt at the time, I've got nothing but an extremely biased take for you, because when Burning Crusade launched, I didn't immediately run through the Dark Portal and start leveling up, because I wasn't high enough level yet. I was still sitting out in Winter Spring and hadn't gotten to, I believe he needed to be 58. I went
again, just like your classic experience.
I was also really excited about Blood Elves. I was exceptionally excited about Blood Elf. So I went and rolled a Blood Elf. I was like, I'm going to go to a PvP server. I'm going to finally roll a Warlock. There were all these things I've been wanting to play Horde. I've been wanting to play a Warlock. I've been wanting to play on a PvP server. That's what I went and did. So for me, Burning Crusade launches and my launch experience is go and roll a Blood Elf. And I'm losing my mind. I'm out there. I'm like, oh my God, there's the scar from where the Scourge came in. And there's all this Arthas lore wrapped up in this Blood Elf lore. I'm having a great time. Can't get over the music. Still to this day, the cello in the Blood Elf music, just the best thing ever. It's fused with my soul and very fond memories of World of Warcraft. Eventually went back to my Alliance Hunter, got leveled up, started raiding. You can hear me talk about that on last week's episode of this podcast. And so I get to 2.4. I get to Fury of the Sunwell. And this was still a time in World of Warcraft where I was not pre-reading about what was coming. I had no idea that 2.4 was going to hit. We were going to get an entire new zone. Yeah, I remember logging in on patch day and being like, wait, there's an island to the north of the Blood Elf starting zone? What? Mind blown. We're going to the Sunwell? I'm thinking about my Warcraft 3 days. This is back when we all loved Warcraft 3 instead of just dumping on it every minute for views. And I thought it was amazing. To me, it was like the most perfect ending. There couldn't have been a more perfect ending because, again, my starting experience with Burning Crusade was rolling a Blood Elf. And so I, even as a Night Elf, because I was on my Alliance main, I walk out onto the Isle of Qualdanas, and the starting zone music starts playing again. And there's Blood Elves all over the place. And it's a Blood Elf art tile set and architecture and everything. I'm just like, oh, it came full circle. You know, I started here and I'm ending here, but it's a different zone. And it was like the first like real major daily hub that I remember. I know there were dailies before this, but this was like, again, kind of the building block for what Endgame would look like for years to come. And I loved it. I thought it was incredible. And also just the idea of kil'jaedan, because he had been hinted at, but like not, it wasn't the Force or like, wasn't in the cinematic, obviously, like Illidan was. But this idea of, you know, Illidan has been dealt with. You know, what the hell is next? Oh, the WoW version of Satan is literally coming out of the Sunwell. Like, let's fight the devil, y'all. I was very into it. It was really cool. And again, because I wasn't able, because of the lack of catch-up mechanics, I wasn't able to step into Sunwell except for a few pickup raids here and there. And we didn't make it very far because I wasn't geared enough, and neither were most of the people in that pickup group. It was awesome. There was, again, this, to me, back in those days, I really liked that there was content that I couldn't do. It gave me something to aspire to. And again, it was kind of this natural living, breathing thing of the game that you hear stories from your friends who did. You know, you kind of sat down and had these story times, and you know, Twitch TV wasn't a thing yet. I couldn't go watch a stream of a raid. I had to, you know, we had friends over. I was in college at the time. You had friends over for a couple beers, and if one of them was like in a hardcore raid group, they would regale you with tales of wiping to kil'jaedan over and over again. And it added this extra little bit of layer, and that's something that I completely understand that they don't want to put in the game. If you're going to spend all this time and make your developers work on all this content, you want the majority of the player base to see that. That's not something I'm ever going to argue for, but it is an interesting layer of the game that we're never really going to be able to recapture.
That's true. The world's just a different place. Yeah. And I think you see that every time a new cinematic comes out, which is, you know, played at the end of quite often quite an involved quest line or raid or something. And we just skip all of that and just watch the cinematic and make our judgments on the story from that, which is kind of like making the judgments on the story of a book by just reading the last chapter, which I find strange. And that's just the kind of the way that we consume content now. Yeah. Which is...
frankly, I really enjoy 2.4. And in an odd way, 8.3 reminds me of 2.4 quite a bit. Because we're back to significantly more traditional dailies in 8.3, which I'm really enjoying. You know, after 8.2, which I rather enjoyed outside of Mechacon. I'm enjoying a return to more kind of traditional dailies. You know, I've had enough of world quests. I kind of like going out, collecting my blue exclamation points, and then setting off. Which isn't to say I want them to go back to traditional dailies for everything from here on out, but I rather like the mix.
I feel like there's a lovely mix, and the thing I like about the daily loop of 8.3 is that, and this has been said often by many different people, but including me. But I like how there's like a bare minimum of stuff that I have to do to keep progress up on my cloak. I don't even really need to do that, really, but just for the sake of staying up progress with my cloak, there's kind of like a bare minimum of stuff that I have to do. That takes me about 20 minutes per character if I really want to do it. And that's going to guarantee me like everything I need to be able to go into enough visions to keep my cloak updated until we get to about level 13, I believe. Of the cloak, and then I might have to do a little bit more, but you know, there's only 15 levels on that cloak, and that's it. And then anything else I want to do if I want to go out and do dailies, and if I want to go out and do the daily that gets my mount eventually, the bug mount and stuff, and if I want to do the rest of it, then I can, and it is useful, and it will give me more stuff to do and reward me for it. But I don't have to at all, with the exception of building up rep. But then, you know, the rewards for rep are recipes for crafting, you know, which I think, so I'm not that bothered about it. They're not giving me like my best in slot essence like they did in 8.2. So for me, I was really motivated to get those reps, and I was going out and doing it all, and I enjoyed that as well, because when it comes down to it, I just like having stuff to do in World of Warcraft. I like being given a reason to log in and to do stuff. And also, you know, it's probably not the best time to judge 8.3 anyway, because the time between a patch launching and me finishing the raid that comes with that patch is my most enjoyable time to play WoW. Like, everything you do has purpose. Every little bit of gear that you get helps you in your like super objective of defeating the raid. Like, everything you do is like very valuable progress towards your end goal. And that's just a great place to be. It's like super exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. But
so yeah, like did you don't remember? I mean, was there like a daily questing kind of grind towards the end of the Burning Crusade that you remember?
Absolutely. The Isle, you would go out to the Isle of Kil'jaedan every day and do your dailies.
And it came in like stages as well.
Yes.
You know,
new zones would open up. I can still see the bombing run like in my brain. Like I remember screwing it up royally the first time, and this was back where it was a predetermined path every single time, and if you didn't get it in one go, you just had to queue it up all over again for like one more demon kill. You know, and then you'd get it, and you'd have to just sit there on the ride until it brought you around.
Well, because I was just looking as a tiny bit of research for this episode, which sometimes I do. I was looking at the dailies on the Isle of Kil'jaedan, and you know, looking at the way they unlock one building by doing dailies for that, and then another building would open up, and then you'd have to complete that by doing another whole load of dailies. And there was like 2 dailies you could do until you unlocked some more at Revered or something. And then you'd obviously get rep from doing, you know, it was the raid and stuff like that. But yeah, and I was just imagining if instead of reading the Fury of the Sunwell patch notes here, I was reading 8.3 patch notes, and what the community reaction would have been had that been 8.3. And I think I know, Garrett. I think I know. But like you said, it's different game now. Different yeah.
Screaming about time.
So it's interesting. But as someone who just hears how much better it was back then, it's interesting, like how I don't think people would want that again. But maybe I look forward to playing classic Burning Crusade and finding out for myself.
God, I hope that actually happens.
Oh, 100%.
It was so. It was frankly, I think it was so far from perfect. But there are. I think for all of WoW, you could throw a dart at any WoW expansion, and I will say I liked this, that, and the other, and I couldn't stand this, that, and that other thing. Like, there's always things I love, and there's things I don't like about every point in WoW's history. For me,
yeah.
Except for Warlords of Draenor, I just go, this was shite, except for like the first 4 weeks. I hated it.
Well, I think Classic achieved what 99% of the player base wanted it to achieve, and it did it beautifully. Now, when you get into the real hardcore of it, then you've got more serious complaints and stuff like that with how Blizzard have approached it. But for 99% of the player base who wanted Classic and wanted to play it, and I include myself in that, it was a massive success and did exactly what it was supposed to.
I really enjoy it.
And I feel like Burning Crusade Classic would do the same sort of thing.
Yeah. I'm just taking a break because there's just, you know, I only have so much time to play games.
Yeah. That's my front door. I'm really sorry. We're going to have to pause the episode just for a sec while I answer that. I'm so sorry.
Pausing the audio-only recording video version. Hi, hope you enjoy this. How you doing, chat? Classic was successful at giving me a fun leveling experience. His doorbell sounds remarkably like a ringing phone. I'm like, Taliesin, do you have a landline, you dinosaur? Successful at giving me a fun leveling experience. Yeah, I'm not really enjoying the end of the leveling experience in Classic, but overall I liked it. 20 to 30 sucks, I thought. And then 30, it gets a lot better. I think 30 to 50 is fine and fun, and there's a pretty good good speed and movement through the zones. And now I'm really stuck in the 50s. But yeah, I'm back playing retail. Frankly, because all my friends are. That's where they all are. So I'm like, okay, cool. And I'm enjoying it. I'm really enjoying 8.3 a lot more than I thought I was going to. Enjoyed the whole 1 to 60 experience, just the end game that didn't do anything for me. Interesting. Getting Burning Crusade flashbacks. Well, I hope so. That's the goal.
Apologies, sorry.
No, it's quite all right.
Just some clothes, it turned out. Sorry, stream. Sorry, everyone. That's a bit of editing for you now, and I apologize.
Doorbell sounds remarkably like a phone ringing, and I was just like, "What are you? What boomer ass person are you still using a landline?"
How does your doorbell go? Does it play a tune?
It goes ding
Please
dong.
Tell me it tells a tune.
It goes ding dong like a doorbell.
Okay.
One of those. But I think this is a good place to kind of just move forward and talk about Wrath of Lich King, and specifically the ICC patch 3.3. Because Ruby Sanctum was a 3. I forget exactly. Was it 3.5? I don't know, but it wasn't a 0.0. 3.3 was where we got Icecrown Citadel. It's where we got 2 new dungeons. We got the cross-server dungeon finder. And also new quest tracking features, which is kind of hazy. I don't remember exactly how that worked, but I do believe it brought in a bunch of features that we were pretty used to from add-ons. And this was a big patch, and this is another one where it checks a lot of those boxes. You know what box it doesn't check though, Taliesin?
What?
New zone.
Yeah. Although didn't sort of Icecrown as a zone kind of feel like, well, I know it didn't come in the final patch, but like everyone always says how Icecrown felt like a new zone because you kind of unlocked it with flying.
Well, that and Storm Peaks.
Storm Peaks, yeah.
Storm Peaks also required a lot of flying, and yeah, another conversation for another. Let's have the flying conversation in its own episode. But I really liked how Wrath of the Lich King handles flying. I like that it took into account and it had max level or damn near max level zones that had flying in mind, and I prefer that massively to Pathfinder. If you want me to go to war with anything in the last few years, it's Pathfinder. I will go to war with it. I hate it. Drives me insane. Anyways, yeah. So 8.3 versus 3.3. There's not much of a comparison in my mind because so much of 3.3 for me was obviously the raid, which whatever we're gonna all of these patches we're talking about today check the raid box, right? They all bring in a raid. But there was such a massive addition to the game, whether you like it or you don't, with Dungeon Finder. It just changed fundamentally how we played a major loop of World of Warcraft. So I think that's a tough comparison to make if we're looking at 8.3 versus 3.3. And then it's made even more difficult by the fact that 2 5-player dungeons were added, which always makes me happy. I get so stoked anytime new dungeons get added to the game.
And it was dungeons with a storyline that led directly into, the raid as well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how they did their storytelling there. In 8.3, you have the introductory quest line, which very famously takes a very long time, and sort of introduces you to assaults and the idea of the re-regeneration array and the different Titan facilities and things like that. But in Wrath of the Lich King, you would just run through a dungeon by Jaina or Sylvanas, and that set up that kind of storyline there.
Yeah.
And to test out the new Dungeon Finder as well. Which is, yeah, cool. But was there any sort of daily content to be getting on with as well? Or was that something that was still...
Oh, this actually...
I don't see any on the list.
That bit is fuzzy. Yeah, these lists are shorthand for sure. I don't think we got new quests in 3.3, new daily quests. I think we're... Maybe I don't know. Maybe it felt like I was literally jousting forever since the TOC patch in Wrath. Because it's like... Oh, the Vrykul Island, says the chat room. I forgot about the Vrykul Island. There were new dailies out in an additional Vrykul area, but it was pretty small compared to something like Nazjatar in 8.2.
And what was the purpose of that? What were you building your? I mean, I'm guessing you were building rep, right? But why were we doing that at the time?
I frankly do not remember.
3 dailies, apparently.
Wow. Yeah. My memory for this is not good. It is not good.
But there's an awful lot of hype around the end of just more tournament dailies. Oh, okay. So it was still. Yeah, but your daily grind was still based around the Argent Tournament.
The Argent Tournament was still the kind of the crux of your daily content, which we were all pretty sick of. In Wrath of the Lich King. I love Wrath of the Lich King, probably still my favorite expansion, but my God, the amount of times that you controlled something other than your character in that expansion drove me insane.
Yes. Even going back and getting, playing through it after the event, that thing is super annoying.
Yes, I was very tired of the jousting controls and also vehicle controls. As much love as Ulduar gets, you did the first damn boss fight was in a vehicle. You weren't playing your character.
Yeah.
Which, like Garrison's, was really cool when I was first introduced to it, and then kind of killed it for me over time.
Makes sense.
Very strange.
I know. I'm glad I haven't had to. When I go to a new raid night with my guildies and we're doing progression raiding, and it's just after the reset or whatever, I am not thinking to myself, do you know what I would love to do before we really got stuck into this? Is like a vehicle boss. I'd really love a vehicle boss right now, just to really kick things off.
Wouldn't you rather catapult a barrel at Rathian than dodge amazing fire effects that erupt out of the ground with your own 2 feet? Yeah.
Hellfire Citadel tried to recreate that, in fairness, in 6.2 with the second most boring opening boss of any raid of all time. But we'll get to that. So minus the vehicles.
Is there anything in 8.3 you would say is on the level of Dungeon Fighter? Because there isn't, right? But there's no like.
What, Dungeon Fighter as in revolutionizing the game?
Yes.
No.
Yeah. Like there's no major systems addition.
No, I mean, perhaps 7.3 could come close with the scaling that eventually came in 8.35. Yeah. The world scaling and stuff like that. That would not be of the same level, but at least it compares. And whenever LFR came in, which I forget. I'm sure that'll crop up in one of these lists.
I believe it will crop up next as we move into 4.3 Hour
I'm going to pretend that
Twilight.
I did that on purpose.
Yeah. I love randomly generated segues. The end of Cataclysm, Hour of Twilight. Raid Finder came in with the final raid against Deathwing. We also got transmogrifiers added. Transmog was added to the game. Void storage, which sure seems kind of useless now, but at the time it was very helpful because this is before we got
of course, because the transmog rules were different then in that it didn't automatically save the appearance. You had to have it in your bank, so of course you needed a lot more bank space. So you could keep all of those things that you want to transmog to. Absolutely Correct. Terrible idea. And that didn't get changed until Legion, actually. Those transmog rules changed. So that's when we could safely get rid of void storage.
I'm really glad Hemwick in the chat room is adding themselves as a hoarder, saying, I still use void storage because I'm a hoarder.
Well, that's excellent. Good for you. That's great.
Yes, absolutely. But this was, again, another kind of major patch. Also added the Dark Moon Island, the Dark Moon Fair Island. I didn't realize Dark Moon Fair, like modern Dark Moon Fair, was this late in the game.
Yeah.
To me, I'm like, didn't that come in Wrath of the Lich King? But no, it came in during.
I always think of one of those things where it's like Dark Moon Fair is great because it's kind of iteratively added to throughout WoW's life, and you could just ignore it for a couple of years and then go back and it's completely different. And you're like, wow, this is fantastic. This is like a fair, I guess. It's kind of exciting in that respect. But I don't ever count Dark Moon Fair updates as content updates for that reason.
Yeah.
Because it's something that I expect to be just added to as and when, really. No one's going to look forward to a new Dark Moon Fair ride, are they? No one's like, here comes the new patch. I've been waiting for this for ages with the roller coaster. Can't wait.
I definitely don't look forward
do you know
to.
What? I take that back. Obviously, there are people that feel like that. Of course, there are. It's impossible that there aren't. But I never count Dark Moon Fair content as, you know, actual content when it's mentioned in the patch list. I'm like, yeah, okay, good, as it should be.
This was the one time it felt substantial because it was a new zone.
Fair.
And it was it's weirdly creepy, and we got a eyeball that sure as hell looks a lot like a N'Zoth or an old god eyeball, you know, moving around. But yeah, it did. It felt substantial, but it also felt dwarfed by Raid Finder, which was, again, this fundamental systems addition to the game, which we will continue debating whether it's good or bad for the rest of time. And I think,
and again, like 3 5-man dungeons and like the climactic raid of the expansion as well.
Were there 3 5-man dungeons?
Yeah, man. End Time, Well of Eternity, and Hour of Twilight.
Oh my god.
And some of those are like pretty short, aren't they? But still there, still content getting on, and some really cool, you know, setups in those raids, in those dungeons as well.
I remember really, you know, again, having a bit of a loregasm going into Well of Eternity. Thinking that was particularly, but I mean, they were all great. End Time was really cool. I mean, yeah, it's just again, kind of a juggernaut patch. Whether you like Raid Finder or not, I think it's, you know, it's just such a fundamentally massive addition to the game, and was how I experienced the final raid of Cataclysm.
Oh, wow.
That was the first big break I took from World of Warcraft. I played in the beginning of Cataclysm and then kind of wandered off. I had a big move at the time and some big life changes when Cataclysm released, and then I came back for 4.3. And thanks to Raid Finder, I got to experience the final raid. And I remember really enjoying it at the time.
What was the difficulty like in Raid Finder at that time?
When I played it at the beginning, it was rather difficult. A lot of wiping, and also a lot more patience from those using Raid Finder to actually work through the wipes, and work it. And then obviously, you know, the longer it went, the more well geared everyone became, and it either became a raffle stomp or kick the tanks because we wiped. You got to see the natural progression of LFR. It was like the rise of. It was like watching Anakin become Darth Vader at the end of episode 3. You know where this is going to end up, and that's exactly where it ended up.
Wow.
Yeah. But at the time, I remember thinking the final Deathwing fight was amazing, and 4.3 did a lot to save Cataclysm for me. I would still put it towards the bottom overall, but you're kind of like you. How did you put this? You thought really hard. You could probably think about the worst wine you've ever had. I'm trying to think of the PG version.
The wine is the PG version of that. Yeah.
I'm very much the same boat. I've really enjoyed all World of Warcraft I played, even portions of Draenor. So when I say Cataclysm is pretty low on my hierarchy of WoW expansions, like I still had a really good time. And 4.3 did a lot, I think, to stick the landing. It really stuck the landing with 4.3. I mean, this was just a monumental patch that I rather enjoyed. So, yeah. What's also fun here is like we could so easily get lost in the weeds about talking about raids, and yet I really just enjoy raids.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a given, and we've done raids and stuff before, but obviously that's a super important part, and it's something you're always going to get in a final patch, obviously, because it is the climax of the entire expansion. And it's something that BFA is getting a lot of criticism for is how it hasn't maybe tied up the story beats or presented them in a way which the player base finds satisfying, which I think is probably a fair criticism. With the whole Ny'alotha thing and the idea that we just kind of do a smash and grab into Ny'alotha and take out N'Zoth, and that's all done and dusted, nice and conveniently for the end of the expansion, and in a time frame that a lot of people are saying is incredibly short. I don't know. I've been watching this method stream for a long time now. I've seen a lot of N'Zoth. I'm beginning to think it's not that short a time.
Yeah, to me, this is kind of working at, like moving at an expected pace.
Yeah,
nothing here is really surprising me. But and then we get to Mists of Pandaria with 5.4, which was Siege of Orgrimmar. We got Flex rating, which was again another major systems addition. Obviously,
and the Timeless Isle.
Yes, which checks that new zone box.
Yeah, and is the first kind of example we see of something that has become a staple of kind of World of Warcraft final patches, but also just mid-game patches and things as well now. This idea of just grindable, repeatable kind of zones, something that like Mechagon in particular very much kind of aspired to replicate, I guess. And you'd say the Broken Shore as well in 7.2 kind of really took that idea and sort of went with it. Tanan Jungle in Warlords of Draenor.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because like I feel like 5.4 Siege of Orgrimmar patch is kind of remembered negatively because of the length we were stuck on it.
It's not the longest final patch, though.
No.
Isn't Dragon's Soul the longest final patch?
No, yeah, because Warlords of Draenor was like, hold my mediocre beer. Let me show you how it's done. But like at the time, like the rollout of it and the fact that we got a new raid, we got a new zone, and Timeless Isle was really groundbreaking at the time. We never had a zone quite like it in the way that it began. I remember really enjoying Timeless Isle, which is funny because it's the building blocks for what eventually became Mechagon, which I did not particularly enjoy. But there's also some to be said for being fresh, new, and unlike anything I'd ever seen before. With Timeless Isle, probably coloring my reaction to it. We also got Proving Grounds, which I was not a fan of. And they changed up the arena system. Not that I was arenaing at the time or could really speak to it, but.
I'm really interested. I want to ask your opinion on something. You were back in the game sort of full time in Mists of Pandaria.
Yeah.
Were you?
Yeah.
Because I took a little break in Cataclysm as well. So I missed the end of Cataclysm. And this patch 5.4 is when I returned to the game. It had already been running a little bit. So it's the first time I actually ever hit max level in WoW, actually, and entered raiding, as you'll remember from the stories from last week. But the Proving Grounds always interested me. Have you ever been in a situation, have you ever seen someone making proven healer or proven tank a criteria for entering a group? No. Because in my head, when I saw that the Proving Grounds existed, I was like, wow, clearly that's so you can prove that you are a proven healer, and then any group would be lucky to have you.
Didn't it lock you out of looking for dungeon? Am I remembering that?
Wow, did it actually? Oh yeah. I mean, I think bronze did. Yeah, you had to maybe survive a Murloc tickling you for a little bit to get bronze and go into a dungeon. I think surely it wasn't more than that.
No, but it just felt like a chore. I remember being forced to do it and thinking to myself, I've been main tanking since Lich King. This is stupid. Why do I need to go do this?
Wow.
This offended me on a deep and spiritual level.
I just love the idea of a mythic guild recruiting and then turning someone down because they don't have proven healer silver. It's like, we only accept gold proven healers in this mythic guild.
I never looked back.
But I am a cutting edge raider. I'm sought after by everyone else on this server. It's like, yeah, but have you got proven healer gold though? Because I'm not being funny. We got bosses to kill.
Yeah, I gotta say,
can't be carrying no noobs.
Proving Grounds, one of the dumbest ideas in the history of World of Warcraft. I will serve that up as one of the worst things ever added to the game.
I don't know. I find it quite fun sometimes.
It's funny. I love Mists of Pandaria, but scenarios and Proving Grounds, huge misses. These things still stick out to me as the two of the things I have hated more than anything else in WoW's history. Oh boy. Whew. Boy, scenarios. Boy, what a. But
I feel like Mists was, and it's lucky that we did have stuff like the Timeless Isle, because that was a long old patch. It went on for over a year, and the combination of the Timeless Isle and the introduction of flex raiding, which opened that up to a whole lot more people in a way, I feel like that did help people live through that patch. But I feel like it also instilled in people an idea that came with Timeless Isle, that there must always be something to do every day in World of Warcraft. You know, I feel like there's an attitude now where if I haven't got something to do every single day, the game is failing me. And I don't disagree with that attitude, but it's noticeable. Whereas I feel like maybe that wasn't the case so much in, you know, certainly vanilla and early expansions, maybe because there were so many less people that got to the end and did run out of content.
Well, I again, I would roll that all the way back to Burning Crusade, you know, with Isle of Caldenas really setting up kind of that expectation. Because whether you were raiding Sunwell or not, you could still go out to the Isle and do your dailies and help build those structures. And even if you came out too late and, you know, they were already progressed to a certain point, you could still work on your rep, so on and so forth. And so I think we've expected daily content since Burning Crusade. So, you know, I think Timeless Isle kind of changed it up in a major way, and kind of ushered in a more modern, like what we think of as modern end game outside of raid. You know, I think Timeless Isle really set the stage for that. I wouldn't fight you there, but I think we've all been expecting something to do daily since BC. And it clearly has been a goal of the game, right? Like that is seems to be a core design philosophy of World of Warcraft, is sure. Encourage players to want to log in every day.
Yeah. Maybe it's more a case of we as players after 5 expansions, in that case, demanding more varied ways to do that, and Blizzard trying to kind of cater for that. Yeah. I guess. All I really remember about Endgame in Mists of Pandaria, apart from trying to join Gary Flex raids, is just chain queuing that one scenario, which was in like the sorry, I'm gonna cough. Which was in the like the arena where you just killed boss after boss. Because it was the quickest scenario to defeat and to get your currency. I can't even remember what it was, but you needed the currency to make your gear better, and that was the best way of getting it. So you just chain queue that one scenario over and over again. I must have done it hundreds of times.
When was this?
This is in 5.4.
Oh man,
this is in Mists of Pandaria. Yeah.
Wow, I don't remember.
I can't be the only person that did that. I can't be the only person that chain queued that scenario over and over again.
I must have blocked it from my memory.
Yeah, seriously.
I don't remember that at all. I remember very little about scenarios.
And one time I queued it as disc, and one time I queued it so much that I remember stupid little things. But one time I got in with 2 other priests, and one of them was holy and one of them was shadow, and we just had like the 3 different priests in this one scenario, and for some reason it felt like really magical, and that was it. that was the best thing that ever happened out of chain queuing that scenario. I hated it. It was rubbish.
Well, then would you like to hold my mediocre beer and talk about 6.2?
Hey, at least 6.2 felt big.
It
to be honest, anything at the end of Warlords of Draenor would have felt big and exciting. But tell me about the wonders that came in 6.2.
Well, we got Tanan Jungle, which did feel big. I mean,
bearing in mind, a little setup to this, obviously, we'd had objectively the most barren expansion so far, with a celebrated and genuinely and rightfully praised leveling experience, beautifully designed zones, awesome music, the real start of like the modern cinematic WoW kind of sort of universe, you know. Yep. And the way that was used in storytelling, and a difference in the way that Loremaster worked, in the way you played through zones and stuff as well, which I thought was really interesting. But then just nothing at all.
Yeah, I mean, you could. I really think you could remove so far. You said the most barren expansion so far. You could remove so far and replace it with ever. Because it just is.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Draenor it'll never happen again.
Was the most barren expansion in the history of World of Warcraft.
No. Exactly. And I feel like some of that was to do with the fact that it wasn't a very well-received expansion, so they had to move on, and they decided to kind of dump a lot of planned stuff. Maybe I also feel like a lot of it came to do with that flying debacle that happened in Wars of Draenor, where they announced that there would be no flying, and that caused a major kerfuffle. I still remember it being the main talking point for about a year. It's when I first, I started listening to the instance around that time, and it was the topic of conversation every single week, and on the Blizzard Watch podcast as well. It's all anyone wanted to talk about, and that was probably exacerbated by the fact that there was nothing else to talk about. But that didn't help. So I feel like when they decided they had to cave to public opinion and go and make flying available, they had to finish the world in a way that it wasn't actually made. They had to go back and they had to make tops for things that didn't have tops, and just change the world and how it worked so it could accommodate flying. And I feel like that was a major drain on dev resources.
It had to be. I mean, absolutely. Yeah. We had an expansion based around doing exactly that. It was called Cataclysm. Back to Kalimdor and Eastern Kingdoms and put tops on everything. Granted, that's more land mass in total, but still, like, we had an expansion that was kind of the pitch. Like, what if we go back to original Azeroth and now you can fly, and we add some new zones, and there's a dragon baddie. I mean, it has to be,
and
right?
I kind of feel like that is maybe what created that big content drought in the middle of WoD, because that's where the big content drought happened in WoD, was in the middle rather than the end. And I feel like the middle big patch was cut from WoD, and then they went back to the plan that they had for the final patch. So I always think 6.2 is probably representative of what we would have got at the end of WoD. It's just we missed what was in the middle.
I think that's really fair. There's just no universe where having to retroactively make it work for flying wasn't a drain, right? Of course it had an effect. Whether that was the only reason we had a drought there, who knows? But maybe the rumors, speculation, tinfoil hat theories is that they also just move on, let's just make Legion good. And a lot of those theories are popping up again. Talking about Shadowlands and obviously because of the reaction to BFA and what people are seeing think is a bit of a lighter final patch, which was honestly the springboard for this entire conversation we're having right now. But if that is true, if you think that is true, I still think objectively BFA had a much healthier content span than Warlords of Draenor overall.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, for me, everyone's entitled to their opinion, but if you are seriously telling me that you think WoD was a better expansion than BFA, all that really tells me about you is that you don't remember WoD. That's all the information I've actually gleaned from that sentence. If someone says WoD was better than BFA, all that tells me is that you don't remember WoD.
But if we are,
that's all it tells me.
There's one thing I will tee up, and it's that if you look at this in a vacuum, if we just go 8.3 versus 6.2 fight, I think 6.2 wins. Because Tanam was massive. It felt extra massive because there had been so little, and Tanaan Jungle was big. Well, let's go through the features. Tanaan Jungle, which was long awaited and fun, and it was really good. It was a really cool zone.
Really anything to do there apart from rep quests, that was your main reason. There were some mounts and stuff to get as well, and world bosses and things, but essentially it took the same form as most of these things in that you were building up your rep. And one of the reasons you were building up that rep, and this is the first time this has happened, was of course for flying. So there's a real kind of frenzy about getting the rep for those factions in 6.2, because that's what unlocked Pathfinder Part 2 finally for flying, which was it's probably just part 1 then, wasn't it? But hilariously, that's what it was. You had the raid Hellfire Citadel, which was all nice and fell. Which is quite exciting. I maintain with a terrible ending. Maybe we'll mention that.
Pretty goofy.
So you had the continuation of the Garrison campaign, which is what we'd recognize as the war campaign if we compared it to BFA.
Yes. Yeah, which was
the Order Hall campaign in Legion.
Yeah, it was the addition of the Shipyard.
Yeah, and the Shipyard,
which was
horrible.
Did not excite me in the least.
It took a bad feature and made it worse, and was not, and actually only the bad features of that feature were used, and the good features were kind of scrapped for the shipyard. If you've never lived through the joy of the shipyard, you should go and do it.
No, don't.
Just to see how lucky you are these days. You know,
if you want to feel better about BFA, go do it.
People complain that the mission table is kind of irrelevant content now, and it's like good. I wouldn't lose the mission table from the game now because it's, you know, a minute or so of clicking every day, which I'm quite happy with. That's absolutely fine, but that's as relevant as I want it. You know, if you want to see what it could be like, go to your shipyard.
Yeah.
The only fun thing about the shipyard was that you could name all your own boats. You probably don't even remember that, do you? You could name your own boats. I remember the names I came up with.
I don't think I ever knew you could do that.
You name your own boats.
And I'm not sure.
Of course, no one else in the game ever sees what your boats are called. That's purely just for you. So you could name them. There were no restrictions on what you named those boats.
I mean, frankly, you should have been able to name every single denizen of your garrison because no one ever saw that either.
But bear in mind, the only time you'd ever see the name of your boat was when the shipyard mission table was telling you something like XXX was destroyed or sank or was successful. So you can imagine words that you could, or things that you could call your boat that would really get the most out of those sentences. And there's a lot that was the most fun you could possibly have in the shipyard. Remains true.
Sounds like a blast. Sounds like an absolute blast. So maybe 8.3 and 6.2 is a closer fight than I think, even if we were going to a vacuum.
And that's also when mythic dungeons were introduced in 6.2. They were on a weekly lockout, so you could do each one once a week. But you know, that was good because you know, Mythic Plus wasn't in place back in those days. So obviously you hadn't run any of those dungeons really for the best part of a year. You did them when you were leveling. You maybe did them a little bit at Heroic before you went into your first raid, but then there was no reason to touch any of those dungeons ever again. And so having them kind of be resuscitated in a way with the mythic difficulty level was a major big deal, and it was quite enjoyable to be able to go back and do those again. And you had the weekend events as well. That's when time walking first came into the game as well. And you know, the stuff like the PvP events and the dungeon events and things like that. So that was, you know, something on it.
I do rather enjoy time walking, although at the at the time it was really hard not to look at it cynically, be like, oh yeah, I would rather play literally anything but Warlords of Draenor. Here we go. But
well, initially, and time walking was rubbish at first anyway, because it was BC dungeons, wasn't it? And yeah, Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King dungeons, which of course were the ones that even like noob players had played through hundreds of times leveling. You know, they were the ones that you did instantly when you started leveling, pretty much. So yeah, even that wasn't very fun.
No, it wasn't great by any means. No, no, it wasn't. Which, yeah, I mean, that's just Warlords, I think, in a nutshell. I mean, I think 6.2 was a legitimate patch. You know, Tanaan was huge. It was a massive zone. It was a lot of. Yeah. I thought it was really cool. It was clearly, I thought a lot of care had gone into it. Even like putting my own fury about flying aside, like Tanaan was a cool freaking zone.
It was good. I preferred running around it from when I could fly around it, though. I've got to say, it lost a lot when you could fly. I didn't get Draenor flying until the end of Legion. I feel like, you know, work had already been put into Tanaan and its design before they decided they were going to allow flying, sort of in the geometry of it. So I feel like it's a zone that loses quite a lot when you can fly. I remember running around it and thoroughly enjoying it, and then you just miss a lot when you're flying. It just doesn't design. I like just the views and stuff don't seem designed with flying. No, absolutely. I mean, that's a challenge and an issue with flying to begin with. You know, as someone who enjoys flying, I completely agree that, like, again, that's why I always go back to Wrath of the Lich King is like the perfect example, because you start on the ground and by the end you're flying, and they can design the zones around it, and it made sense. Storm Peaks
Clearly a zone with the flying in mind. ICC actually seemed, Icecrown seemed less so because it was pretty flat. It's just you wanted to avoid the actual army of Scourge, which was cool theming, but not as visually interesting. But really, for me, the peak is 8.2 with Nazjatar. I mean, like that zone changes immensely, and I think in a positive way when you start flying. Because it makes sense. It's a zone that's supposed to look like it's underwater, even though it's no longer underwater. Makes sense that flying through it works.
You experiencing it more like the denizens of Nazjatar would have done before it was not underwater anymore.
Exactly. But I'm not just
when I'm flying around Nazjatar herbing, sometimes the view takes my breath away. You know, particularly when you see like the actual kind of Naga buildings and the actual kind of city, which I maintain there should be a lot more of in the Nazjatar zone. That kind of stuff is mind blowing. I think that's great.
I love that zone so freaking much, and it's going to go down as for me. I think my favorite thing it might be my favorite thing in BFA. It's just Nazjatar. Nazjatar blew my mind.
Yeah,
I really like that zone.
That's how I want to see flying implemented into a final patch. I want to see something akin to Icecrown, where if you don't have flying, there's an army of baddies that you have to walk through, and they're gonna kill you. So like flying is literally how you just get over the army of baddies to get to something else, and just to avoid them. And I think that would be a really nice reason to have flying. I think Storm Peaks did it very well. I think Cataclysm in parts did it very well. Anyway, that's a conversation for a different episode, I think. But I having said how kind of full 6.2 was and how much stuff there was, I do remember going and doing my entire Lore Master achievement during 6.2, as in going back and completing all of the quests that I didn't have on my character that I had started in Warlords of Draenor. So basically everything else in the game. I remember 6.2 being a perfect time to do that. So it couldn't have been that full, is what I'm saying.
I unsubbed. This was the longest break I took from World of Warcraft. You were just telling me
how brilliant 6.2 was. You were just like that. I'm sorry. Can we rewind this video a little bit? Can we just rewind to where Garrett was like, you know what? I think when all said and done, 6.2 probably better than 8.3. I'm just saying it was a really big patch. That's all I'm saying. He said it in this exact voice.
Playing devil's advocate.
He said it in this exact voice. He was like, it was such a big patch, and there was so much care, so much love. I think it's my favorite patch. I think it's my favorite patch. I've got the 6.2 logo tattooed on my arm and on my ring finger because I love it so much. Oh, I am subbed though.
If someone out there could make,
are you in classic, Garrett? Sorry.
If someone out there could please make me a supercut of all the times Taliesin has played Devil's Advocate, so I can just cue it up for moments like this. No, I thought I was
confused. Why is there two Garretts? Well, quite. Sorry to fool you with my acting skills.
Again, I thought it was an interesting thought experiment to, in a vacuum, compare the two, and I think there's an argument for the Tanan jungle and the breadth of it and the size of it and the scope of it, maybe winning out over returning to old zones at 8.3. I think there's an argument to be made there. I don't agree with it.
Argument.
I think
very fair.
I think 6.2 was a rotten cherry on top of a shit sundae. Like, I think Draenor is a...
Well, I mean, and I think there's another relevant... we did touch on this last episode, so I won't dwell on it, but there is a relevant other comparison with 8.3 there, which is the rubbishness of the ending. Because I'm sorry, like, I know that the end cinematic from WoD is definitely better than the end cinematic from 8.3.
Has more effort put into it.
Yeah, absolutely. As in, there are some characters talking.
But in terms of it being a meaningful conclusion, I would argue 8.3 wins.
Absolutely, definitely, because there's nothing as galling as Grom Hellscream just being forgiven of all of his sins, and the reason we forget, and I'm sorry, I keep having to repeat this because it's still what makes me angry now. The reason Grom Hellscream gets forgiven for trying to genocide all of the Draenei and trying to genocide everyone on Azeroth, the reason we forgive him for that is because he gets captured by the Legion. He's like, I'm going to genocide you all. It's like, oh no, we must fight against him to stop him genociding us all. Oh, I've been captured by the Legion. Don't worry, Grom, we'll help you. That's literally why we forgive him. And then after we've rescued him from the Legion, he spins around a bit against Archimonde. And then after that, and I'm not being funny, Khadgar did more work in that fight than he did. And at the end of that, he's all like, whoa, freedom. And it's like, no. No, Grom.
Excuse me.
You've got a serious war crimes tribunal to go
I'm about to say,
now.
please, where is War Crimes 2, the novel?
Yeah. Let me introduce you to my friend, the lawyers.
So with that end,
got some questions to ask.
Would that end with Grom going back in time further? And then we end up with Warlords of Draenor 2? Yeah, okay.
I mean, he didn't even say sorry. He didn't even say sorry. Like, all he had to do to get forgiven for trying to kill everyone was get captured by the Legion.
I can't.
That's all he had to do. Imagine it was that easy. I wouldn't even get forgiven for not doing the washing up. Honestly, if I texted Evertel now and I was like, Evie, I didn't have time to do the washing up today. I got captured by the Legion. I would not even get forgiven for that, let alone a genocide.
Please clarify terminology. Is that what Brits call doing the dishes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, is it doing the dishes or showering? Because, you know,
either. I wouldn't get forgiven for either.
If I came home and you were stinky, I wouldn't be. The Legion
would be no excuse for either, let alone something serious. You know? Oh.
I just need a clarification of terminology there as a U.S. denizen.
And yet we forgive him.
Yeah.
And Evie would be like, wait, you haven't done the dishes? No, I'm sorry. You haven't even said sorry. Like, why would I forgive you for that just because you got captured by the Legion? And I'd be like, because I'm spinning round, Evertal. Because I'm spinning round, though. Look.
Well,
do you forgive me now? Freedom. No.
With that in mind, I think it's time to have the biggest final boss of this entire conversation, which is 8.3 versus 7.3.
Right.
7.3, Shadows of Argus.
Now we've agreed officially that Garrett thinks 6.2 is better than 8.3 Now that's the official take.
That's definitely where I'm going. There's no contest here, right? Like 7.3 might be the best patch in the history of World of Warcraft.
Wow.
Is it? Like,
I mean, that's quite a claim.
Like, it's a juggernaut.
So you've got 6.2 tattooed on one arm and then 7.3
7.3 is on my ass. That's how much I love it. It's on my butt. Yeah. It's my left butt cheek because that's the one I favor because of my wallet.
No, surely you've got 7 on one butt cheek and then 3 on the other butt cheek. You've got the point already there.
That is such a horrendous visual. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Oh, good Lord.
I was already talking about the patch, but I'm done now. I'm done.
Jesus. Ugh. But I mean, Argus was a massive achievement. Like the scope of Argus as a zone, the scope of the lore of the final patch. You know, we had two new factions. We had invasion points. They added world bosses. The Nether, like Crucible, whether you liked it or not. We got a new dungeon, which for the love of God, like you did, everything is here. The kitchen sink is here, Taliesin, and everything I want in a final patch is here, and it goes above and beyond. I think other final patches that have checked those boxes, and especially the new zone, because Argus was just ridiculous in how large it was.
And whereas I probably wouldn't agree with you that it's the best patch in World of Warcraft, because I don't think a final patch could ever be as good as, say, the start of an expansion, because it has to do more difficult things. You know, for a start, the final patch is always around for longer, so you're always going to wear out of the content, and it's kind of designed to be repeated more than the very beginning of the expansions. So, you know, like an opening patch will always have, you know, the leveling experience and stuff like that, and the initial end game, and I think that's probably more enjoyable than any final patch. But yeah, I think as an ending of an expansion, like Legion was kind of a masterclass. It wasn't perfect. I know there was a lot of criticism for the way the story panned out over 3 weeks and 3 zones. Personally, I loved that. Personally,
I thought it
that was
was brilliant. Infinitely better than like what happened with Suramar and that rollout.
Oh, I loved Suramar as well, but I don't feel like I need the thing I love to be repeated all the time. I'd rather them try something different and it not be quite as good than just try and repeat the thing.
Yeah, I enjoyed the story that Suramar told, but the glacial pace at which it rolled out drove me a little nutty. I thought
so.
I thought 3 weeks for Argus. I thought it was better in just the way that you had like these 3 unique zones. I don't know. It felt more like it Suramar felt like it needed more time in the oven, whereas I thought Argus felt really thought out. Like it had a good...
I feel like the gaps that you were waiting for more Suramar stuff was very much like, oh, well, I need more rep. So to continue this story, I need to go out and do some world quests and get my rep up. But that's up to me. Whereas in Argus, it was very much, okay, I've done the story for this week. Now I have to wait until next week. There was nothing you could do to hurry that along or to it was... time gated, or and that,
it was
that rubbed a lot of people up the wrong way. There was plenty going on in those zones to be doing in the meantime, and it was so amazing to even be in Argus at all, and like from a lore perspective, it's something I found incredibly exciting. Plus, we'd had so long to get excited about it because we'd been told we were going there from like the opening weeks of the expansion, and then. We'd had all of 7.2 with the thing in the sky, like just there, like da da da. You're going here. How cool is that? Da 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 da. And I think, like, I reckon they should have just literally ripped that off again for BFA. I think once N'Zoth was released from his prison at the end of 8.2, why don't you have like the Black Empire skybox? Why don't you have that there, like as sort of appearing in the sky?
Maybe you don't need to see it
closer or something.
Like maybe you didn't need to see it from like Kalimdor Eastern Kingdoms, but at least from the BFA zones, like out on the islands. Like why not? Why not have a bunch of tentacles on the horizon?
Oh shit! Well, this isn't touching us right now, but it's on its way, sort of thing. Here it comes.
Yeah, it's something that probably doesn't make as much sense if your non-raid experience is taking place in old zones. Right. If you wanted to switch, because the story explains that, and there's an awful lot that I like about going to the old zones. I feel they could have really won that. I feel like they could have really won it if they'd included Storm Peaks. I feel like Uldum and Pandaria was super fun to go back to, but we all know that there's a Titan facility in Storm Peaks as well, and having 3 of those zones, I think, would have made it feel overwhelming enough that it was super fun. Ooh,
then you might have had complaints that if you needed something in one of those particular zones, it took a while to come back round again. But who cares? I think had they,
well, damn it, Taliesin, I'm really enjoying 8.3, and now you just made me enjoy it less because it's such a freaking brilliant idea, and I love Storm Peaks so much. Now I want to return.
And I would have happily seen Storm Peaks. Well, there'd be no reason to if there were an 8.
It would have been a chore to do dailies in all 3 zones, but
yeah, it'd be great. It'd be awesome.
They could have cycled it more.
And Storm Peaks. Yeah, no, it would be great, and it would have been fun, and it would have fitted with the story that they're telling, and it would have just been fun. And I think to have had like some looming threat from N'Zoth visible. And very much unavoidable in the world, like the Argus skybox and that appearing in the sky. That was so like exciting, and
oh my god,
it just told the story and it set your focus, and it would have made all of Lorthamar and Jaina and stuff being like, yeah, let's go overthrow Sylvanas because that's the only way we can actually be allowed to unite against this threat. Make that threat more obvious. Have the skybox. Have it there. Have it like, big and tentacly and sort of, or have it so it just like sometimes flashes in. You know how like in the cinematic at the beginning of 8.3, Anduin kind of like he goes to that like weird thing and the vision starts taking hold and like N'Zoth just kind of flashes into the background in like a lightning strike sort of thing. You could just be walking along anywhere in the world and much like Deathwing would just swoop out of nowhere and occasionally kill you. Like suddenly the sky would just turn to Black Empire.
Yeah.
It would be like like that, and it'd be like a horror game, and the sky would be Black Empire, and you'd be like, "Holy shit, the sky's Black Empire!"
So
now I understand why we're all so scared of 8.3.
So rolling around in the fun of this aside, even more, I'm still hung up on your, Storm Peak should have been part of it. So if we would have been on a 3-week cycle, then we also would have needed a third location for Horrific Visions, which means the only option is Dalaran. So we would have had to fight Shit Wizard Khadgar at the end of that, and I would have been very into it.
That would have been cool.
Amazing.
It could have been Dalaran, or it could have been like Storm Shield.
No, Dalaran. It's Dalaran. It's in the sky. Shit Wizard Khadgar's at the end, making dad jokes.
Right. It needs to be on Azeroth. No, you're quite right.
Oh, that would have been so good. That would have been so good. Freaking Khadgar. You
wow.
Dad joking bastard, you. I just need
that would have been pretty cool. Dalaran's like really built for Horrific Visions as well. It'd be cool. Maybe a bit small, but
just made it a little,
it's a good shape.
A little denser. Play with your aggro radiuses. I think you can make it work. right. Just make it a little dense. It'll be fine. Yeah. Oh, that would have been so great. Would have been so great.
But either way, even if you did only keep it with 2 Horrific Visions, because why? There's no need. There's nothing that says that there has to be a different Horrific Vision for every different zone.
Because I just want to kill Khadgar.
They could still be on a 2-week cycle, and the zones could be on a 3-week cycle. There's no reason why you'd have to. But yeah, like Storm Peaks was a missed opportunity for me, and having some kind of visual build up to 8.3, like Argus had the advantage of in 7.2 with Argus in the sky, I think would have been really useful. And the idea that I just came up with the Ny'alotha skybox just like appearing every now and then, and it'd be an easy thing to do. You literally just replace the skybox, right? So
I love that you say it would be an easy thing to do. We have no idea if it's an easy thing to do or not.
Super easy to do. If I have a private, I'm not a programmer, but I am, I know a tiny little thing or two about code. I'm pretty sure I could code to replace a skybox with another one. Because it's just numbers.
Clearly.
Because there's nothing in the way. There's nothing in the way. It's not like replacing a texture where it might not fit or something. Like a skybox is a skybox. It's super easy to change. Easy game.
Well, I mean, clearly the reason they're not doing it is because all of the folks in charge of skyboxes are working on Shadowlands. We know it for a fact. They've been moved off BFA onto the next thing.
Cool. Anyway, but
yes.
Yeah. So again, 7.3 is where they kind of really push the daily quest thing hard, and I think I prefer. I think for the daily content, I think I prefer 8.3's approach than 7.3's, because it was just dailies that we'd already had all the way through Legion, and they were presented in the exact same way, and there was nothing new about that. I remember that being a big criticism at the time, because I think we rightly remember 7.3 as being a really good patch now, and I think that was correct, and I think that is the right thing to do. But it wasn't super well received at the time. There's a lot of people who were willing to kind of say, there's a lot of people who were willing to kind of say that they didn't like that patch.
I was a little burnt out on it at the time. I remember just kind of being like, the scope and the zone is very cool, but I'm a little over the green fire. Like, I've seen enough of it. It was something that I kind of came back to a little later in its life and enjoyed more thoroughly. It's actually pretty analogous to my personal experience with 8.2. When 8.2 launched, I was like, oh, I'm not into this. I'm not feeling it. Again, my issues with Pathfinder were really grating to me. I was not enjoying grinding more rep to get flying, and kind of put me off of it. Something about 8.3 7.3 when it launched, even though I already had flying at the time, and it was irrelevant because you couldn't fly in Argus. There's something about it where I was like, I've seen enough Hellfire. I'm done. I'm not interested. I actually didn't. I was a little late to the grind of Argus. But when that personal feeling had worn off, and I returned to it, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was kind of insane, actually, the scope of it.
I think there's another comparison that we can make between 7.3 and 8.3 is the new gearing system that was introduced. There's been a criticism of modern WoW in general, how recently in every patch they introduce a new gearing system. and how that makes the previous one not so important. Although we don't like it when it does remain important, like essences. And do you remember what it was in 7.3?
Netherlight Crucible?
It was a Netherlight Crucible. I'm not surprised you had to like grasp for that, because it was the most flaccid, boring like system ever.
It doesn't stick out to me.
It was shocking. Come on, be honest. It was bad.
It wasn't great, but I also just don't. It doesn't come to the forefront of my mind because it wasn't something that I really thought about that much.
Well, quite. And they admit now that they just ran out of ideas of how to expand the artifact, and that's what they came up with. I found everything about that system tedious and boring and stupid. But again, you needed those good artifacts to put in there to make yourself viable in sort of raiding and other end games. So it's something you kind of had to engage with, but it was terrible. It was pretty bad.
Yeah, I've mixed emotions on that entire thing. Like you said, that kind of criticism of I don't know, additional systems in the way of gearing, like as much as I liked artifact weapons, it got pretty long in the tooth. And also I missed just getting weapons from loot. At a certain point, I'm like, I just want a new damn weapon. Like, I don't know. That's probably, again, I feel like it's funny. We always trip over things. I never
got bored of artifact weapons. I loved them, but the Netherlight Crucible was horrid. I hated it. And I much prefer corrupted gear. Bring me the corrupted gear. Bring me the cloak. I love all that, but I like corrupted gear, and I'd like to pat the designer on the back who made it. And I'm not a Mythic Raider, so I can say that. And I don't care about you Mythic Raiders. I am the 98%, and I like corrupted gear. I like how it is massively overpowered and broken. I like that's thematic for the aesthetic of and just feel of 8.3. I like the little balancing game that you have to play, and how that's an improvement over Titan Forging, which was objectively an improvement. If a piece of gear Titan Forge, there's never a reason why you wouldn't want Titan Forge gear to Titan Forge, and there's never a reason why you wouldn't put on Titan Forge gear over other gear. Like, of course you would. It's like you always want any piece of gear to be Titan Forged, and that's not the case with Corruption. There's like that there's the little min-maxing game that you have to play, and I find that really interesting, and it's fun being a bit overpowered. And if that means people blast through the raid a little bit quicker than they would have done, it's the last patch of the game, and I'm okay with that. Although I've got to say, I don't think people will, because that mythic looks hard.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. As we kind of stated at the very top, I really enjoy corrupted gear a lot, way better than that. Like Crucible, if anything, I think to me essences are more analogous, because I didn't really enjoy essences, and I didn't really enjoy the Netherlight Crucible. But yeah. I mean, overall though, 7.3, just massive patch. So. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm really excited we had this talk. It was really cool to compare the two and clearly trigger you so deeply by even trying to devil's advocate for 6.2.
Look, I'm sorry. Okay, Garrett, I'm sorry if I insulted your favorite patch ever, 6.2.
You need to stop.
I'm sorry that I said bad things about it. I'm sorry. Like, please don't send me any hate mail. Not again. I can't deal with it. Don't send me hate mail just because I said I didn't like 6.2 as much as you. And I did like 6.2. 6.2 was very good. I just didn't think it was the best patch ever in the world like you did. I just don't want to marry it and have children
literally
with it. Okay?
unsubbed from
and
the
I'm
game.
Sorry about that. I'm sorry if that's being triggered.
All right. One word answers. 1.11 or 8.3. Rapid fire. Go. One word answer.
I'll let you know. I'll let you know when I get there in Classic.
Wonderful. Well, send your emails to wowkillercast@gmail.com, everybody. Kind of curious if you have a favorite end patch. Let us know. One day we'll have an episode that doesn't go 2 hours and we'll have time to actually take emails.
God, did we do it again? Oh,
close.
This is your
close.
fault.
Not quite there. It is my fault. It is my fault. Had I just been like 6.2, it sucks, moving on, we could have moved on with our lives. But yeah, keep writing in, folks. I am reading.
Wait, hang on. No, I can't let this happen. I can't believe we talked about your favorite patch for 6.2. Like your favorite patch 6.2. We talked about it so long because you love it so much, and you were telling me all the things that you love about 6.2, and then you were like, and then I love this about 6.2. Oh, and don't forget this thing that I loved about 6.2. I love this as well, and yet no one even said the word Apexis crystals.
No, for the audio audience.
Oh, wait, was it Apexis crystals?
I am.
What were the ones? Wait, no, that was Legion. That was Legion. What were the ones in 6.2? What were they called? Oh no, I forgot. Why don't you know this, Garrett? It's your favorite patch.
I don't remember. I don't care. They were Apexis.
It was Apexis crystals.
Okay,
it was Apexis crystals. Okay.
Yeah.
Nether shards were Legion. Apexis crystals was 6.2. That's why it was seared into my brain. That's why I thought it maybe was Legion, because it was more recent. Apexis crystals 6.2. I was right first time.
Pits.
You should have known that. You should have known that, Garrett. It's your favorite patch.
Clearly, yes.
Don't you have a big poster of an Apexis crystal up above your bed?
A poster? That's not good enough. I have a fresco painting. It's wonderful.
Did you spend $300 on a Apexis crystal statue?
I have a 6.2 fresco painting on my ceiling, like the Sistine Chapel. It's wonderful. I have to have traditional Italian artists come in with scaffolding and touch it up every 10 years.
Apexis crystals.
Well, this has been wonderful. Folks, let us know. Tweet at us, WoWKillerCast, or write in wowkillercast@gmail.com. Let us know what your favorite end of final patches, like proper final patch. I don't want to be actually the final patch was. I don't want to hear about your half patches.
Get out of it.
Get out of here.
Get out of here with that.
Get out of here with this. But yeah, that's where you can write in, folks. I've been reading those emails one day. We may just do a mailbag episode one day. I think
we should. Maybe we should do that next week. Let's do. Have we got lots of emails now?
We've got quite a few.
We don't want people to not send in emails because we're never answering them. Let's do a mailbag episode next week.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds wonderful. So write in wowkillercast@gmail.com. Tweet at us at wowkillercast. You can also go subscribe to the YouTube channel if you would prefer the visual medium. Which, if you're used to Taliesin's work, it's just talking heads. It's not as visually interesting. But we are two beautiful men. So maybe you just want to stare at us.
One considerably younger than the other. So whether you like beauty or experience, there's something here for you.
Yeah, go over to bit.ly/wowkillercast. We have crossed the threshold for a custom URL. The channel is not old enough.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah,
okay.
I forgot that there's X amount of weeks. We should be now, I think. I think we're over it now, so I should go claim that. But bit.ly/wowkillercast to go to the YouTube channel. Give us a sub. Follow us over there. And we're all over the place. It's WoWKillerCast for everything. It's wonderful.
I just made a joke about you being the young one in this duo, but I appreciate that you try and make me feel better by wearing that pork pie hat. That old man hat.
A pork pie hat is brilliant.
I would call that a pork pie hat.
Pork pie hat. Yeah. I have one, and it looks nothing like this.
Okay. Well, I call that an old man hat.
That'd be a variant of a fedora, which means I don't wear it very often because fedoras have been co-opted by people who like to wear Tyrion Lannister quote T-shirts.
Are you telling me that if you weren't wearing that old man hat that looks like you should be drinking warm ale down a Victorian bar, you'd be wearing a fedora? Is that what you're trying to tell me right now?
Basically.
You're not disproving my theory.
I'm an old soul, Taliesin. What can I say?
Yeah, that's an old man hat. I don't care how many Irish heritage New York punk bands wear hats like that. I don't care. It's an old man hat. Everyone knows it.
It is. Actually, all of my hat purchases are probably based off of the fact that I really enjoyed ska and pop punk in high school.
I think that's fair. I bet you've also got somewhere still a pair of shoes with really thick soles and a bit of zebra skin on the toes.
Sadly, I was never that down the ska rabbit hole. I was was and still am. I went the Chuck Taylor route. The Chuck Taylor route.
I see. Okay.
Also because bands wore those, so of course that's the shoe you buy because you like bands. Yeah. You have to rep the brand everywhere you go, Taliesin. I mean,
it's amazing how easy
if you want to make fun of my hat, I don't know what to say about your wonderful selection of cardigans and sweaters. I mean,
My old man clothes.
You're ready to you didn't play in vanilla, but you're ready to be like, come in, Sonny, let me sit you on my knee and regale you with tales of vanilla World of Warcraft.
But the thing is, Garrett, if I wasn't wearing this cardigan, I'd be wearing a fedora.
Ooh.
Well, if I wasn't wearing this shirt, cardigan, and trouser combination, I'd just be wearing a fedora.
Well, then next week, we need to swap. You need to wear your old man fedora, and I'll dig up a sweater somewhere. I actually don't really have that many.
Awesome. Sounds good to me. Let's do it.
Wondrous. Well, folks, that brings us to the end of the show. Taliesin, before we go, where can everyone find all of your lovely work outside of this podcast?
Taliesin and Evertel, where the beautiful Garrett is replaced by the beautiful Evertel, but otherwise it's pretty much the same. You can find us on YouTube, and you can find us on Twitch, and you can find us on Twitter. So find us, or we'll find you in it.
Definitely an upgrade. When KD and Evertel need a like WoW liver. They need to start their own podcast.
Oh yeah, that'd be good. It'd probably be better than this. Let's be honest.
They are our better halves. I'm Garrett Art on Twitter, and everything this podcast included can be found over at amove.tv. So go give it a look. And also, I've been horrible at doing this. A big thanks to Andrew Allen for our outro music. Folks have been asking about it. Andrew Allen did it. He does wonderful jazz covers of all kinds of awesome music. You can find his work over at andrewallenmusic.com. And he just sent it to us one day. He emailed me. He was like, Garrett, I love WoW Killer. I can't stop listening to it. I did a jazz cover of, I believe it's the Goldshire Inn music. So if you go to the Goldshire Inn and creepy things aren't happening there, you'll hear this music. But Andrew Allen put together a wonderful little jazz arrangement of it, and that's what plays us out every week. You can find Andrew Allen's work over at andrewallenmusic.com, and we really appreciate him. This wasn't something he already had made, which is, by the way, if you ever listen to my Star Wars podcast, we also use his music, and that was already laying around. He has a whole Star Wars album. But this
wait, so you're telling me that listening to this podcast made him think of Gold Shit Inn?
Yes, he specifically wrote us and said,
dude,
he loves this show. He's like, you and Taliesin talking about WoW. He's like, it reminds me of like sitting in a coffee shop during like vanilla World of Warcraft at its high point, where the only thing my friends and I wanted to talk about was World of Warcraft. He's like, it's just like two friends chatting about WoW over a coffee, and I feel like this music would be in the background. And
awesome.
I loved it so much, and it's such a wonderful little arrangement. So that will play us out, and go check his work out. AndrewAllenMusic.com. We thank him for it. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back next week, but until then, good luck and have fun.